Thanks for tuning in to the Long Island Local Podcast, recorded here at Audio Workstations in Bohemia, New York. We are interviewing local business owners, entrepreneurs, trying to provide you with the best information on all types of products and services available right here on Long Island. I'm your host, Matt, and let's jump right into the conversation. Welcome, everyone, to the Long Island Local Podcast. I'm sitting here today with David Badanes of Badanes Law Office. Thank you for coming down today and talking with us.
No problem. My pleasure.
So tell me a little bit about the category of matrimonial law, which is your expertise. What does that encompass?
So it's certainly a big, large umbrella, but most people would call it, doing divorces, from very simple, uncontested divorces to very contested divorces, the kind you see on TV and the movies. But there's a lot of other things that fall under that umbrella. Obviously, you can have children without being married, so there's, child custody issues and child support issues. And then for people who, before they get married, of course, they may want a prenup or prenuptial more formally, and do plenty of those. And then, unfortunately, there's the world of domestic violence, and both men and women can be the victim of that, quite honestly. And that falls under either criminal law, which really the DA takes care of, or it can be in a civil matter, which is in family court, at least in New York State. And that is not a criminal matter, but so attorneys like myself could either defend somebody or, in a sense, be the prosecutor, sort of like what a DA would do. And also I do engagement rings. It's a kind of a niche that a lot of people find me because I have a couple articles on it. So if you get engaged and your fiance, and then you break it off, you're allowed to get the engagement ring back.
Interesting.
It's called what's called, not to get too technical, it's called a conditional gift. And sometimes the fiance says, "Not so fast. I'd like this nice ring you bought me."
Yeah,
but I've
had friends in that scenario,
and they do have to give it back. And some people spend a lot of money on these rings, so they're like, "Hey, what's up?" Basically.
Yeah, and not to get sidetracked, but the whole topic of diamonds is a fascinating one. The real earthbound ones versus you can create them in the lab now.
You can, that's
and
right.
They're exactly the same as I understand it.
Chemically, at least. And then what? Well, I don't know if it's funny or not, but somebody, one of the cases I had, they swapped out the real ring for a fake ring, and one made in the lab, and the fiance didn't know that.
Right.
And then when they were getting divorced, she wanted to once you're married, you get to keep the ring, no matter what. And then she wanted to basically pawn it or cash it in, and all of a sudden she finds out that it's a fake ring.
Well, yeah, I wonder how they figure it out. It must be a certificate of authenticity that
there's
isn't there.
There's that, and that gets through the microscope. Or I'm not a chemist. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you could tell at the microscopic level. I understand that De Beers puts a lot of money into convincing people that the ones from the Earth are way more valuable.
It's
than
all
the ones
about
in the lab.
If I had a piece of rock here and say, "Hey, by the way, this is really valuable."
Yeah.
Who made up this thing that diamonds are more valuable than whatever else?
I think De Beers did, actually.
They did.
I think they did.
They probably did.
Listen, we like shiny things, right? And so our nervous system is being hacked with shiny things.
Yeah, I guess so.
So you mentioned in New York State, obviously we're in New York State, and I imagine that a lot of things that happen in this matrimonial category are intra New York State, right? Inside New York State only, but do you sometimes get situations where people have left the state?
Right. I'm only licensed to practice law in New York State. So many times there'll be somebody in a different state that will either they just moved there and they will still file for divorce here in New York, or we have someone here in New York and the other spouse went to another state.
Yeah.
Or, and happens more in the child custody arena more than divorces. They have a child, and either the mother or the father goes to another state, and I don't want to get too technical, but, so now, which state has jurisdiction?
Right.
The one that the mom or the father happen to move to North Carolina or New York. So, yeah, plenty of
sticky
stuff.
situations.
I mean, I've had one, it happened in California and also Ohio, where like which state has jurisdiction. And now those two cases actually were divorces.
Yeah, and then you have to start talking to lawyers in the other state.
As you probably know, California is a community property state
Okay.
versus New York State. So they got married in California, and they had a California prenup in that case. So that was kind of interesting because luckily I do know a couple of attorneys in California. I called them up, and they pointed me to somebody that knew California divorce law. And, well, what I love about a law is, in some ways, no divorce is the same.
Right.
Yes, very similar, but that one was certainly very unique.
Okay. So when did you begin practicing law?
Well, this is actually my second career.
Okay.
Maybe my third career, depending. My dad was a teacher, and my original goal when I went to college was to be a math teacher. But then I got recruited to do computer programming out of college. And at that time, well, probably still, computer program was made like 3 times more than teachers made.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, I'm young, and why not? I could always go back to teaching. So I did computer programming. And
what year was that?
Well, I hate to date myself,
That's
but
all right.
that was, I graduated college in 1982.
Okay.
So defense industries were really ramping up then. And so they were, again, I was recruited. I was in the computer programming field for many years and did many different things. But the languages I was learning, knew were becoming somewhat outdated.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't program, iPhones or anything like that. And also, it wasn't really the love of my life. I made very good money in it. But like I said, I kind of got recruited into the field, and kind of like, because of the money thing. And then I like to say, I was actually divorced in my former life, so to speak. Okay. And then when I got remarried to my current wife, we're married almost 25 years now.
Congrats.
And she has like a psychology background.
Right.
And she's like, well, look, you're making very good money, but you're really not loving what you do. It sucks when you go to work and you really don't like what you do. So she says, well, what else do you have an interest in? I said, well, I have an uncle who's an attorney. I've always had an interest in the law, but I'm like, hey, I'm too old to go to law school. She says, no, I know people. And so I did my due diligence. And I talked to a lot of people. I'm like, you can go to law school anytime. Yeah. And what's great about law is, which I've learned now, is you can be a lawyer to the 80s, 90s, whatever.
Right.
As long as you can still think, that's the beauty of it.
You don't have to lift boxes or anything.
Right, exactly. So as long as you can, you have that brain, so to speak. So I still did. At that time, I was a computer consultant, really not doing programming too much anymore. So I was able to go to law school at night at St. John's, my alma mater, my second alma mater. Still work during the day, and so now I've been an attorney. What are we now? 19 years.
Okay, and was it immediately in the specialty that you're in now?
Well, that's the other interesting thing.
Okay.
Originally, my original focus I thought was going to be elder law. And which by the way, I do still do some wills and trusts, and I do. It's about 5 to 10% of my business is sort of what would be called elder law. Due to my career in computers, again, and maybe whatever, I got a job in New York City working for a patent and trademark company, a law firm. That was at least I was doing litigation, not getting patents.
Okay, so people
not
suing each other.
Yeah,
over
mostly
patents.
very usually big money. You can imagine. Or people trying to get suing people for trademarks and also copyright. So so I wasn't, because to get people patents, you have to take the patent bar. It's a whole different deal.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's an additional type of legal training in order to obtain patents.
And there's a certain requirement. So, but you can litigate patents without being in the patent bar. It's
understood. And a lot of people don't understand the difference between patents, trademarks,
no one
and copyrights.
understands. Very few people.
I tried to learn it in college, and I try to keep the definitions with me. A patent is an invention or a process.
Very good.
A trademark is like a visual thing.
It doesn't have to be a visual.
Okay.
I mean, think of
like a logo, for example.
Think of Nike. That's my example. I still use to this day. You can buy Nike sneakers, and that you go to stores like, oh, you happen to like Nike. You remember the name, or you can remember the swoosh.
Yes, swoosh.
That's the visual part of it.
Yes.
And those are basically your two different type of trademarks.
Right.
Is just the name or the visual.
And then
copyrights is, well, of course you have movies, books,
music.
But it could be even something you draw and you use that for your as a visual, like a painting. Maybe.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, like a piece of art that's
So.
not necessarily representative of like a company,
Right.
but just the art itself.
The art itself, right. So.
Okay, cool. So there's a little lesson for everyone who's unsure about patents, trademarks.
So I can't get people patents because I'm not part of that bar. I can somewhat, if someone calls me about it, I'll give them somebody I know that I trust.
Yeah.
Once in a while, it's not a big part of my business, but I will get trademarks here and there.
Yeah.
Still, I don't really do copyrights. Again, I can give people...
Copyrights are easier, though. Like for individuals.
They're very much easier.
Yes, for an individual to obtain
But anything else you can... I always tell people you can still screw it up.
Yes, you definitely can. But at least I'm familiar with the copyright process with music. I can tell you that the Library of Congress website is atrocious.
Oh, yeah, it's terrible.
It's like they wrote that website the very first year the internet existed and never bothered to change it.
Well, because no one gives them money. I mean, I know that's an excuse, but that's,
Yeah, it's every time I advise someone to copyright their music, and they go to the Library of Congress website, they're always just like, what is going on this website? I don't understand where to click. I don't understand what to do.
There's no help.
But it does work, but it's like you have to spend pretty much an hour trying to figure out where the button is that you need to click to upload your
the file.
Your file, you know.
It is horrendous.
But at least copyrights here you can kind of do on your own. Yes. Trademarks and patents much more the realm of lawyers.
Oh, yeah.
And I even attended a Audio Engineering Society conference meeting. But I went to one specifically about patents. And they had a patent attorney as a guest speaker. Right. And I pretty much left that with the impression that if you're not a big company with at least like 30 grand to throw at it, you're not getting a patent. Is that accurate? Is that accurate?
I wouldn't say it's completely accurate.
Okay.
But not too far off.
It's not too far off.
It's very difficult. And the problem with patents is that, and when I was in the field, it is expensive.
Yeah.
And for the regular Joe, you want to spend that much money. There is a way to kind of cut the cost.
Like a provisional.
He knows the terms.
That's from watching Shark Tank, yeah.
The provisional patent. So that's a way to kind of dip your toe in the water, not spend as much money, and then see if there's really something there.
Okay. And
that's what I recommend to people who they think they have the greatest things in sliced bread, but you really want to spend $30,000, so maybe you can spend $5,000 to $10,000.
Yeah,
and at least get something. Get the provisional, which is basically a fancy word for temporary.
Right.
And at least you could kind of then see if you're going to really make some money out of this.
Yeah, I think there's maybe an argument to be made that the patent system is not achieving what the original intention was.
Well, that's a whole different debate, Matt. We can talk about that for hours.
All right. Well, I'm glad I remembered the difference. I think I learned that one at University of Central Florida. So shout out to my communications professors there. I didn't finish that degree, but I did retain the information that I learned there. Yeah. So now we're done with patents, and it's all law. It's all matrimony stuff from here on in.
Right. So anyway, I worked in the city for 5 years. Great job. Making very good money working in the city, but you can imagine.
For a larger law firm at this time?
I'd be considered a large law firm for Long Island, mid-size for New York City, kind of.
Got it.
And did love it, but it was a lot of long hours, and my kids were much younger then. And that law firm, what happened is the main rainmaker passed away. And they were kind of losing business because the main rainmaker passed away. I kind of saw the writing on the wall, and plus I was getting tired of the commute. So I didn't want to kind of sink with the ship, so to speak, although they got taken over. So depending on your point of view.
Right.
I had the opportunity, even when I was in the city, to do other things as well, including some divorces. So when I went out to open up my own firm in Northport, hung up the shingle, as they like to say. Mm-hmm. It was one of those things that I call it the snowball effect. I got one client, 2 clients, 4, just kept multiplying. And because I'm not to pat myself on the back, but I've always been a very good student, be able to learn things. So although at the time I didn't have a lot of experience, 15 years ago, so I learned the divorce law and matrimonial law and everything else, by taking a lot of legal classes on the side, etc., asking a lot of questions, reading up a lot, and just quite honestly doing the work.
Yeah.
So that's
how it came to be.
That's how it came to be.
That's a good story. It's interesting transition from computer programming to law.
What's really interesting is, and I never would have thought it at the time, there is actually a lot of commonality because when you write programs, you have to be very precise.
Yes.
And when you're looking at the law and reading the law, you have to be very precise as well with your words and stuff. So that's the commonality of it. I mean, there's a lot of differences, no doubt.
Going over the code with a fine tooth comb versus going over the legalese, writing.
The same thing.
Okay, I see
so
that.
that's the commonality. I think also being very logical, which is, again, with computers and computer programming,
ultra
and the same
logical
thing. And I think that's the commonality. And I've always been also a very good reader. So that's not so much with computer programming, but that helps with the legal field as well.
What were the computer languages you were actually programming
C
in?
and C++.
Okay, yeah. Those are two, the big ones.
Right. And they're still around. Those are still around, but the machines I was working on and the specialties I had, there is still a company that does that, and they're still around. It's not like it's totally dead, but the opportunities to do it as a consultant were quickly dwindling.
Gotcha.
And again, it really was more of like my wife said, I was very good at it, did it, but I wasn't really loving what I was doing per se.
Yeah, the passion wasn't there.
You're right, the passion was.
Yeah.
Versus here, I always say the first day I went to law school, I was like, oh my goodness, I should have done this like 20 years ago. But I always say life, different paths, and it takes you where it's supposed to be, I think, at the end.
That's cool. Yeah, I know quite a lot about trying to maintain your passion. It's the reason why these studios exist, essentially,
right?
To try and make pursuing things like music production, podcasts, and YouTube studio, like media creation in general, try to make that more possible for people who are thinking of it and passionate about it, because it's undoubtedly a tough industry that's dominated by a lot of big players.
I can imagine.
But at the same time, there's a lot of opportunity with new technology for independent things to happen. And if you're smart about it, you can build something up independently. And so we're trying to sort of just provide an opportunity and a workspace for that to happen here. So I'm totally with you on the passion thing. That's important because...
Oh, yeah, you have to have it. I mean, if you're not loving what you're doing and have passion, you could do it well, but it doesn't drive you, and it's hard waking up in the morning, I guess.
I was just about to say that. It's that thing about waking up in the morning and like not wanting to go do something that you have to do versus enjoying what you have set up for that day. And that I think makes all the difference for your mentality. And like you said, with your wife being into psychology, she keyed into that.
Well, she's I always say she's the brains behind the business, so to speak.
That's awesome. So of all the things about doing what you do, what is the part that you love the most?
Well, look, we all know that and again, I was, like I said, divorced in my former life. So for many people, it can be, they say that divorce is the second most thing that hurts people versus, death number one, divorce being the most, grieving a lot. And I understand that. Yeah. And I'm not a psychologist. I'm not your therapist, but my goal is to get you from A to Z, get that divorce completed with as least pain as possible for you, at least on the legal end.
Right.
And it's really, I know it sounds trite, but that old thing about helping people, and I know what happened in my divorce, and I really find a lot of pleasure in helping people, and I have a lot of great reviews on Google and all that, just by really being a regular person, so to speak, and getting people through it. So that's kind of what drives me, to help the regular person, so to speak, get through that process.
Yeah, it's a rough
on the legal end. Again,
Yeah.
I'm not there to be their therapist. I can point them to the right direction.
Yeah, but if the legal side of things is adding tons of stress, then that's going to have a negative effect on them personally. So just by having a sort of path of least resistance as much as you can, it's really all you can do on that end, and just that way they're not preoccupied with the legal stuff. They can
as much as possible. Yeah.
They can focus on their own personal healing and just have the legal stuff be a thing that happens.
Right.
And that's valuable. Yeah. Because it does seem like it's one of the number one stressors. Let's say death, divorce, and then moving, I think.
Moving.
Moving is
I
up
haven't
there.
moved a long time, but yes. Yeah, I think they're probably right about that.
It's all the change, you know what I mean?
People, you learn very quickly, people hate change. No matter from very small to very large, and like I said, divorce is big change.
Creatures of habit.
Typically in divorces, what are the things people fight about? Their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And one big difference that has happened even in my 15, 20 years that I've been in the business, that judges recognize that really children need two parents and not just one, and the other one kind of visiting in a sense.
Right.
So that has been sort of a big title change in just the thinking of judges, so to speak. But really, what, is this person really available? What have they done? That's what they really are looking at nowadays.
So tell me a little bit about the specifics of the last few years, because obviously business for most people has not been quite so as usual since we've got hit with pandemic-related stuff. And so in what way has that been affecting what you do?
Courts have become virtual, in many ways.
Saves on the gas.
Saves on the gas, but also saves on the wear and tear of the car.
Yeah.
And also, quite honestly, it saves time.
Yeah.
I mean...
And time is money.
Time is money. And so if there's a 3 o'clock, virtual call on the calendar, 90% of the time you'll be at 3 o'clock, 3:05 versus the old days. Many times you could, and I always told clients, the court is the court. I have no control over it, and you could be at there and it could be a 9:15 or 9:30 calendar call, and you could be there and you're not getting in front of the judge till 10:30 because of just how they used to work it. But with the virtual world, and of course there's certainly exceptions to that rule, they're pretty much more on time. And again, you don't have to waste time also driving there and driving back.
But I bet you that's a big part of it, is that all of the variables, you're waiting on so many people to show up at the correct time, right?
Right, yes.
And the chances that everybody is having a perfectly scheduled day with no traffic and no flat tires.
Right, versus they tell you 10 o'clock, get on your Zoom call.
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. Because again, they could be home, or even in the office, or with a cell phone now, because people are calling from their car half the time.
Wow.
So you're right. I think that's the advantage of it.
Yeah.
So of course that's a big change. And I do want to put an asterisk on that. If there is going to be, because most of the time in court, it's a conference. It's not a trial. It's like a status kind of thing. Of course, if there's going to be a trial, I still want to be in court because you really do need to have people inside the courtroom in a trial for.
And they're still doing that in person?
That is, and again, there's still some judges
right.
who have their regular conferences in person as well, and it seems to go back and forth on what that. But so that's one of the biggest changes, of course, COVID is, and I hope they keep that forever.
Interesting,
because that really is a time saver for everybody, and it just makes life so much easier.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I think that there are some silver linings in the way
that
we've been forced.
I'm an optimist at heart. So
yeah, I mean, look, you have to be willing to recognize both good and bad things, and I think that in the areas where, like, we've had technology that can do this for a while,
forever,
obviously, but we've been just stuck in our old ways.
Well, plus courts, as you know, are traditionally very conservative.
Yes,
and they talk about hating change. And they were, I don't know if they were kicking and screaming, but they knew they had to do it.
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning when no one was going to. No, and you have to remember, many of these judges are elderly.
Yep.
And they did not want to get sick.
Right.
What was it, March or April when the pandemic first happened in 2020? I remember that first day when, it was almost like Panic City. The judge said, everybody in the back of my courtroom. He didn't want anybody near him. Yeah. And because he didn't have that screen. And I don't even think he had a mask yet.
Right.
But he was, it was, I'm not saying it was funny, but it was very weird.
It's odd, yeah.
It was not the usual course of events.
Yeah. It's interesting because when you think about older folks, yes, resistant to change, but yes, also not wanting to get sick. Right. And so this thing kind of outweighed this other thing just a little bit, like, oh yeah, we don't like new technology and change, but we also really don't want to get sick. So I guess we're going to have to learn the Zoom thing, you know.
And it's really not, well, I don't know, I guess maybe from my background.
Yeah.
I don't know why people think it's such a big deal,
right.
Personally. I mean,
Yeah, I've made this joke
They give you the
before.
link and they tell you, you have a computer. I don't really get the
Really, the biggest deal is something that I've been doing professionally for years, which is selectively pressing a mute button when you're supposed to. That's been a large part of my job description for years.
Right,
now everyone else knows how to go boop.
Boop, right. That whole joke, are you there? We can't hear you. You're mute. That whole thing, yes.
Yeah.
But so that's the biggest difference. And then, of course, with COVID and the economy, that has been a big shift in people's economic fortunes. In 2008, we had the big reception, whatever you call it, and that was a big hit on the economy, and there was a big spike in divorces then. And people make the joke, I don't know what it is, but that, people can't stand living with each other, so that's the spike now. But we've been pretty busy in this world.
I know what you mean in the sense that it's I guess fairly practical to have a marriage where you have two working people. They're out of the house most of the time, and the amount of time that they're interacting is less than the amount of time that they
If you carved up the number of hours pre-COVID versus now where people are home, I'm sure they're home, probably at least 20, 30, 40, 50% more of the time.
And that's that much more opportunity to piss each other off.
Or whatever it is, yeah.
So, going forward in 2022, what are your predictions for how things are going?
Well, I never predict the future because, I just don't. But, we all hope that the pandemic, will subside a little bit and that'll become more cold-like, No one likes getting a cold, but,
still go out to work.
You go out to work and do what you have to do. Or maybe more flu-like where a little bit more serious, but people aren't dying from it or getting very serious illnesses.
Right.
So like everybody else, that's what I'm hoping for and predicting, and that things will become, and I hate to use the word more normal, but, more normalized. And, but I do predict that we'll continue with the whole Zoom world thing, because I think people really do see the huge advantages of it, both in courts and other places.
So we should keep the technology where it makes
absolutely.
sense.
I do not want them going back. And I think, I don't think the court, I think the court agrees with that for the most part. So that I see, but in terms of whether there's going to be more or less divorces, who knows?
Yeah, we can't predict.
Well, the only thing I will say, and this is a lot of us before COVID, again, you got my age a little bit, in the quote unquote old days, and of course I'm generalizing to the nth degree, people would meet in high school, they'd get pregnant, they'd get married, but they really weren't right for each other. And then of course, 10, 15 years later, they're like, wait a minute, we had a kid, but wasn't really right. Now, as you probably know, most people, are not getting married till the 30s, and they're a lot more mature, and they kind of know, who's the right person, at least for the most part. So generally, divorces were going down before COVID because of the people just getting older, and in a sense, maybe more wiser. So COVID kind of upset that whole dynamic. But in general, people don't get married when they're 22 anymore.
Right.
They get married when they're 28, older.
Yep.
They don't have kids till they're 35 or 40 even. So that has, and that's a good thing, that people are more mature and, generally
thinking about it a little harder.
And then not like just, we got pregnant, we got to get married kind of thing.
Right.
So long term, I still think that divorces will be less prevalent than they used to be 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Okay. So let's talk about when you decided to go from working for someone else to working for yourself. What kind of challenges, in addition to the actual legal work, in terms of just being the business owner, how does that affect you in addition to just being a lawyer, but being a business owner?
Sure. Well, first of all, I love being my own boss. I have to put that out there.
That's a good one.
I've had opportunities to join other firms or partner up, but just my personality is I like being my own boss. But I was very lucky when I left the city. I had two, and they were not divorce clients, although one turned into one. I had two very large litigations that came with me, so that sustained me for a while. And then I had to learn the world of networking or rainmaking, getting clients.
Yeah.
So I did. I joined. I don't know if you're familiar with these groups called BNI or LATIP. They're networking groups where people get together for all types of industries.
I'm learning a lot about networking groups now, and through doing this podcast, I've met a few different people who have recommended different networking groups, and so I'm rapidly becoming familiar with this concept.
So I joined these networking groups. You could probably go to and I'm not even this. I'm probably not exaggerating. I think you could go to a networking event every day of the year, even Christmas. I mean, I'm telling you, there's so much out there if you want to, and I get so many emails about it, but it's not too hard to find.
But you find it's a valuable resource.
Find it. Well, what happens is, for people in my business, and probably even other lawyers, the best referral sources for me are other attorneys. If someone is a personal injury attorney or a bankruptcy attorney or a general business attorney,
right,
and they don't want to handle the divorce. They're like, wait a minute,
All
I
those
know
specialties.
Dave,
Yes.
and I'm going to give him my divorces, and maybe he'll give me my, personal injury cases or bankruptcy cases, whatever.
Right.
That's one way in terms of just and the talking about the snowball effect. Do I do a divorce for you? You hopefully refer me to your friends and family.
Right.
Back in the day, I don't really do it anymore. Google was a pay-per-click, and did that. So I have a very good website SEO guy.
Mm-hmm.
So you do learn pretty quickly what you have to do on the marketing end side of it, that people aren't just going to find you just because you have a shingle out there. You do have to hustle and do the networking and meet people and do things like this even.
Sure.
And then your name gets out there and, from your former clients as well.
I think the specialization
Well, I think you have to
cool.
be, you can't be, again, I think there's pros and cons to everything, but especially in the legal world, it's hard to be a total generalist.
Right. There's too many areas.
Look, like I said, I don't only do divorce wills. I do wills and estates, and I learned through high school and through some of the things I've done. I do just general litigation because that's very similar to divorces in a sense.
Mm-hmm. So when you are outside of practicing law, what are some of the things that you do to unwind and not think about law for a second?
I do like to go hiking.
Okay.
So that's one of the favorite things I'd like to do on Long Island. I try to do that every weekend pretty much.
Favorite spots on Long Island?
Oh, gee. Well, right around me is Sunken Meadow State Park.
I love Sunken
in Keys
Meadow.
Park, and they have all those woods there.
Great place to see the sunset.
Yes, that too.
Yeah.
And it's hilly and flat depending whatever you want to do, and you get the Nisqually River there.
Yep.
So that's probably one of my favorites because it's both. It could be whatever you want it to be, either challenging or fairly flat, and it's very accessible, of course, for me.
And they have those extra big lifeguard chairs that you can sit in if you can climb up
for the
to
winter. You can't go there in the summer, but I'm yeah. So I used to play a lot of softball, not too much anymore. Some skiing. I like to be outside. In the summer, of course, I'm a beach bum at heart, so you usually can find me on the beach.
Okay. Favorite Long Island beaches?
Cupswag Beach,
okay.
which is Suffolk County residents only, and so that's one of my favorites. Sure.
Gotcha. Those seem like healthy ways to unwind from legal work.
Yes. Yeah. You gotta clear the mind.
So great. I think I've learned a lot about not only your history, but a little bit of the detail about what's been going on in divorce land on Long Island over the past couple of years. Awesome. So thank you so much for coming down today. As music and media production people, we get lost in the technical details of all the things that we do, and we just sat around and thought, well, who are our neighbors? Who's still doing business here on Long Island, and how can we get to know them and get the word out? Can I do a
shout out to my wife's business?
Please.
Okay. So anybody who knows Northport, we have a toy store called Einstein's Attic, specialty toy store that we've known about 8 years now, and she does a great job. If you ever need a toy, she ships now, so much better than anybody else out there.
That's great. Where did the name come from?
Well, the previous owner was named Einstein's Attic. The previous owner, I think, owned the business for about 20 years.
Okay, got it.
And we just took
So it was a legacy name.
Legacy name. We couldn't change that.
Well, it's a good name.
It's a great name.
Awesome. David Badanes Law Office and Einstein's Attic
for the toy store
in Northport. That's awesome. So you can get divorced and then get a toy.
That's right. Or get a toy and get a...
Whatever order that you prefer, or you can get a toy for the person you're divorcing to make it not so harsh. Yes.
That's right.
All right, I'm going to end it on that excellent non-legal advice.
Right. That's right.
Thank you, everybody, for listening, and thank you to David for coming down and talking to us.
My pleasure.
We'll see everybody next time.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the Long Island Local Podcast. If you're interested in studio membership programs for music production or content creation, please visit audioworkstationsinc.com. And please check out our guest of today's podcast. We enjoy having on all local entrepreneurs. If you'd like to be considered for a featured interview on our podcast, please contact LongIslandLocalPodcast@gmail.com.